Right now, Saudi Arabia is burning hundreds of billions of dollars building an absolutely insane sci-fi ecoregion in the middle of the desert, billed as the future of human-centered urban living inside of a futuristic hub for business and technology. It's called Neom. Neom has been getting a ton of media hype recently, driven by badass renderings of planned features like a ski resort in the desert, a line-shaped horizontal city, and an upside-down skyscraper in a mountain. But I have to say, even after seeing all these cool pics, me still confused, which is why I've decided to launch an investigation titled Neom is currently the biggest construction project in the world, which is impressive considering that it's mostly just a hole in the sand. However, the plan for Neom is to become a collection of distinct regions, each with their own fun vibe that defy the laws of science and architecture. Take a look.
This is Oxagon, the world's largest floating structure.
Trojena, a year-round mountain destination.
Aquellum is built inside the mountain.
The Line, a 500-meter-high, 200-meter-wide, 170-kilometer-long city in the shape of, well, a line.
Alright, but I mean, who among us hasn't created an unrealistic to-do list? Now, there's been a ton of reporting on Neom's wild architectural ambitions, and one of my favorite pieces so far comes from fellow A-list sex symbol Patrick Boyle, whose recent dive into Neom's design was a big honkin' hit. I invited Patrick to walk us through his favorite elements of Neom's urban planning.
Hi Dan. Neom truly is an amazing project. Included in it is a city called The Line, which will be only 200 meters wide, but 170 kilometers long. This is quite an egalitarian plan, given that now everyone in the city will have a bad commute rather than just some people. There are other great ideas in the city too, such as the Robot Dinosaur Park, a giant artificial moon hovering over the city, which will live stream images from outer space. There's going to be a beach with glow-in-the-dark sand. There'll be schools with holographic teachers, a metaverse platform, a digital asset marketplace for crypto and NFT trading, a hyperloop, a mixed reality social media experience, flying autonomous taxis, artificial rain, human gene editing, robot cage fighting, a sport that's really growing in popularity, robot maids, which might just be one of those robot vacuum cleaners, but I think it'll likely be much better. And best of all, 24-hour surveillance with face recognition cameras and drones, along with AI-powered healthcare systems and judiciary systems. But for me, it'll be all about the robot cage fighting and the giant artificial moon. You just can't get that stuff in places like London or New York. Hell, half of the time, I can't even hail a carbon-neutral flying autonomous taxi around here. Neom is clearly the place to be. Back to you, Dan.
Righto! Thanks, Patty. But why build all of these robot dinosaur parks and glow-in-the-dark beaches like you're a Middle Eastern Walt Disney on trucker meth? Neom is the brainchild of Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. MBS is the autocratic leader of Saudi Arabia, and other than murdering journalists, his big thing is something called Vision 2030. Right now, Saudi Arabia is the world's #1 oil exporter. It also owns the world's biggest oil company, Aramco. Vision 2030 is a grand economic plan to diversify the kingdom's dependence on oil before the world transitions off of fossil fuels and oil becomes worth a whole lot less. The idea is to diversify the Saudi economy by investing their oil money in a bunch of different stuff. US tech stocks, sports leagues, AI development, green energy infrastructure, and yes, futuristic sci-fi cities in the middle of the desert. And this is all with the goal of creating a vibrant, thriving economy where tourists will flock and foreign corporations will want to set up shop for decades to come. Now, Neom is the keystone to this plan, and MBS hopes that his G-fueled sand Atlantis will follow in the footsteps of places like Dubai and Singapore. Non-democratic city-states without much land or resources, but whose rulers turn them into zones with business-friendly laws so that foreign investment will flow in.
If you look at a place like Dubai or Saudi Arabia, or to a lesser extent Singapore or China, Hong Kong, These are all places that are actually non-democratic forms of capitalism.
Quinn Slobodian is an author and historian whose latest book, Crack Up Capitalism, argues that when it comes to capitalism, instead of countries, there's another increasingly important way to understand how the world is organized. A patchwork of small economic zones that money moves through, where democratic politics don't matter as much as corporate-friendly laws and investor returns.
They are also the places that have been some of the most high-performing, high-growth, high-revenue-producing parts of the world in the last several decades. And they are looked at with greater and greater admiration and envy by some people on the conservative right. When MBS sold NEOM as part of this big Vision 2030, we're going to sort of kickstart a move away from oil dependence in Saudi Arabia. One of the things he said that was kind of the most striking is we're going to build this new city, and it's going to be a totally private city.
That city is none other than The Line, which you'll recall is that horizontal, sprawling megalopolis. You're going to be able to invest in NEOM where The Line exists like a company. It'll also be a free trade zone with its own set of bespoke laws completely separate from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is attractive for global investors who are generally super horny for things like free trade zones and tax havens, and generally not so horny for things like Sharia-based legal systems.
This is sort of one of these ideologies that's kind of on the rise, whether a total privatization of all state services from security to health to border to arbitration and contract could all be somehow done by private service providers, something that previously had been in the realm of science fiction.
That's right, everybody. Science fiction business cities with CEOs instead of mayors and legal systems that prioritize investor interests instead of democratic rights are here. Hell to the fuck yeah. And it's not just NEOM. Cities with private governments embodying the movement Quinn writes about are starting to happen in reality years after being just a fringe libertarian idea. Like in Honduras, where a group of investors and venture capital firms, including Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen, have created a private city and special economic zone called Prospera on an island off the coast. What I wouldn't give to spend a day on a libertarian island just shooting guns and drinking Red Stripe and peeing wherever the government says I can't. And in this context, NEOM's launch, a splashy TED Talk announcement, a good-looking pitch deck, and blasting promo videos from your social media accounts before you've actually made anything starts to look a little bit less like how you build a city and more like how you launch a startup.
Well, I mean, a lot of it, I think, is just the outcome of the early 2000s hype world of Silicon Valley. The idea is really come up with a cool name, come up with a good concept, and, make a good pitch deck, and then, figure out the rest later. If you look at the things that were supposed to happen, going to be supposedly big green hydrogen plants involved there. There was going to be a massive desalination plant. They were going to have this sort of super high-tech new logistics hub and deepwater port.
And despite many of the good intentions NEOM says it has, it turns out that turning sci-fi into reality is really hard and really expensive. MBS once said that he expected the first phase of NEOM to cost about $320 billion by 2030. So far, NEOM is estimated to cost $500 billion, and most people think that's a gross underestimation. And maybe it would seem worth it if the desert was littered with these kick-ass cyborg palaces we were promised, but so far, that ain't how the cookies crumble. Construction has only really started in earnest in 2 out of the 10 developments that NEOM has announced, Sindala and The Line. But The Line's first phase has been downsized from 10 miles to 1.5 miles, and its long-term goal remains 105 miles total. Meanwhile, estimates were to have 1.5 million people living there by 2030, and now that's been downsized to only 300,000 people. But this hasn't stopped the kingdom from continuing construction while also pushing out thousands of natives who already lived in the region and murdering one tribal leader who protested eviction. NEOM even has plans to host the Asian Winter Games in 2029 at the Trojena Mountain Resort that doesn't even exist yet. So, who told MBS that they could pull this off?
On paper, they had their consultants lined up.
We meet again, you pencil-pushing rattlesnakes. I knew there was something evil lurking in this project.
But the question is, will the kind of froth of high oil prices be enough to carry them into that future, or will they start to pare away all the interesting things, the frankly important things like big green hydrogen breakthroughs, and turn it into basically just another high-end resort for the wealthiest people in the world? And I think that given the kind of direction of travel of everything in global capitalism, it'll probably just end up being, the like Instagrammable kind of yacht marina for rich Nepo kids rather than anything else.
This does feel very Fyre Festival-y.
Totally, yeah.
And folks, I don't want to stand here and act like I'm a hater against big dreams like Neom. I mean, who wouldn't love to drive their yacht into Oxagon, Norlana, or Aquellum before hitting the slopes on Trojena, swimming on the chemically glowing beaches of Sindala, and catching an opera at Utamo just to tuck into your futuristic hotel room by nightfall at Lejom Serrana or Epicon, or maybe you spend a night at your pied-à-terre at mile 84 of the line. I certainly would, and I say that all the time. But this entire operation sounds like it's using the same tactics ripped from Silicon Valley's playbook. Talk a big game about improving the world and humanity first, and figure out how to do all that shit later. What matters now is getting investors in the door and seeing how high this rocket can fly, baby. MBS, I like your style, compadre. But as an early Theranos investor, I gotta say, I feel like I've heard this song before, and it doesn't end well. Although, if I'm wrong, you know where to find me.
And as Neom continues to expand, the Saudi Arabian government is excited to announce its latest city to add to our burgeoning economic zone: New Jersey. New Jersey is a dynamic, sexy, and multicultural hub, overflowing with innovation and tropical getaways. In a recent deal made with the US government, America will slice out New Jersey and ship it to the Red Sea. In return, the US will get Cristiano Ronaldo.
Hello, truthers. Interrupting that Neom ad to announce that I, Dan Toomey, was recently on a game show called The Getaway, which is streaming now on Nebula. In a desperate attempt to pay back my credit card debt, I travel with a bunch of other creators across the American desert, competing for a pile of money through a series of games that I was told would be fun, but instead left me severely emotionally damaged. Nebula is the internet's independent home for high-quality original shows, documentaries, and even films like The Getaway, the travel game show Jetlag, and an upcoming documentary called Boomers. Neat. Episodes of The Getaway will be coming out weekly, and you can subscribe to Nebula through the link in our description to watch for only $5 a month or $30 a year. And in between episodes of The Getaway, you can go to nebula.com/goodwork to watch all of our videos ad-free. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you on the other side.